Right now, somewhere above the cold center of Lake Superior, a boat is probably crossing the water. The surface looks like it always does, wide, indifferent, a little dark near the horizon. But 530 feet below that boat, there are 29 men who have not moved since November 10, 1975. There are 26,000 tons of taconite pellets, a split hull, and a wreck that has been surveyed, studied, mourned, and legally protected, but never opened. Everyone knows that Edmund Fitzgerald went down in a storm. That part is famous. What is less discussed is what sealed means here. Not sealed by depth alone, not sealed by cost or technical failure. Sealed by a deliberate, multi-layered decision that has been renewed every decade since, and a wreck that is slowly, quietly collapsing around the men still inside it. The question was never only how she sank. The question is why, 50 years later, she is still down there in pieces nobody will touch. Before we start, what part of the world are you in? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. The Fitzgerald lies in two sections about 170 feet apart. The bow is upright and partially buried in lake sediment. The stern is inverted, completely overturned, which tells you something about how fast and how violently the ship came apart. Both sections sit near the international boundary, in water generally considered to fall within Canadian jurisdiction, roughly 17 miles northwest of Whitefish Point in Ontario. The depth is 530 feet. That is not ocean trench territory, but it is well beyond where recreational divers can go. Access requires submersibles or remotely operated vehicles, and even those have limitations once you are dealing with a hull that is actively deforming. In 1995, the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society conducted a recovery operation with specific authorization. They brought up the ship's bronze bell. It is now at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum in Whitefish Point, Michigan. The name Edmund Fitzgerald still visible across it. Before the team left the site, they lowered a replacement bell back down to the wreck. That gesture was not a symbolic decoration. It was acknowledged that the rest of the ship would stay exactly where it was. The bell came up. Everything else stayed down. Lake Superior's fresh water might seem like a preservation advantage, and in some ways it is. Salt water accelerates certain kinds of biological decay, so the absence of salt theoretically slows the breakdown of organic material. But fresh water creates its own corrosion chemistry, and steel under pressure in cold fresh water does not simply pause. It changes on its own schedule. ROV surveys conducted in 2005, 2010, and in subsequent expeditions have tracked Fitzgerald's condition across 2 decades, and the trend is not encouraging. Hull sections that were intact in earlier surveys have buckled or collapsed by the next visit. The stern, already inverted, has shown progressive deterioration with each new survey. The wreck is not preserved in place. It is failing in place, slowly, incrementally, and without any intervention to stop it. The crew manifest is exact. 29 men. None were found on the surface after the sinking. None have ever been recovered. No human remains have been visually confirmed in any survey. They are almost certainly still inside the hull, in sections that no ROV has been able to safely enter. The ship is sealed not by a single decision, but by an accumulation of physics, law, engineering limits, and grief, and the accumulation is growing. The Edmund Fitzgerald left Superior, Wisconsin on November 9, 1975, loaded with 26,116 long tons of taconite pellets, bound for a steel mill near Detroit. The weather forecast was bad, but not unusual for late November on Lake Superior. By that evening, it had become something else entirely. Winds reported at sustained speeds of up to 80 miles per hour, with gusts significantly higher, and waves estimated between 25 and 35 feet. The Fitzgerald was in radio contact with the Arthur M. Anderson, a nearby freighter captained by Jesse Cooper. Captain Cooper tracked the Fitzgerald on radar through the storm. At approximately 7:10 in the evening, Fitzgerald simply disappeared from his screen. No distress call, no mayday, no life rafts deployed, no survivors reached the water. The ship was gone so fast that the crew had no time to respond to whatever was happening. Based on the split hull, the debris field, and the absence of any emergency signal, investigators concluded the sinking was catastrophic and almost instantaneous. The ship went from a vessel in distress to a wreck on the lake bottom in a matter of minutes, possibly far less, though no official estimate has ever been confirmed. The official investigation pointed toward hatch cover failure. The Coast Guard Marine Casualty Report, issued in 1977, concluded that improperly sealed hatches likely allowed water to flood the cargo hold progressively during the storm, destabilizing the ship until the hull failed under the combined weight and wave stress. That is the official finding, and it is the most widely cited explanation. But the Lake Carriers Association formally disputed it. Their position was that the Fitzgerald had likely struck a shoal near Caribou Island earlier in the storm, sustaining structural damage that went unreported, possibly because the crew did not know how serious it was, or because the storm made clear communication difficult. A bottom strike in those conditions could have opened the hull to flooding before the worst of the weather even arrived. A third theory holds that a sequence of massive waves overwhelmed the ship's structure directly, without any prior damage. None of these theories has been confirmed. None has been ruled out. The section of the hull that would most clearly answer the question, the midship area where initial flooding would have begun, is inside the collapsed, inverted stern. The one place that could finally settle the debate is the one place that is physically dangerous to enter. The engineering problems begin with depth. At 530 feet, the wreck is reachable by mixed gas diving in theory, but the practical limits are severe. Decompression requirements at that depth are extensive, bottom time is extremely short, and the physical environment inside an inverted, collapsing wreck is among the most dangerous conditions a diver or ROV can face. Zero visibility is common. The space is filled with debris, loose steel, and silt that billows at the slightest disturbance. The stern's inverted orientation means that anything inside it is upside down, in the dark, with sections of hull pressing inward. More recent ROV surveys have confirmed that portions of the hull have collapsed further since earlier expeditions documented the wreck's condition. Areas that were previously passable are no longer so. The wreck is not a stable ruin. It is a structure under ongoing stress, and any physical contact risks triggering additional collapse that could trap equipment, destroy evidence, or both. A comprehensive forensic survey of the kind that might resolve the cause of sinking debate would cost millions of dollars. There is currently no government body, no university program, and no private organization with both the authorization and the funding to carry one out. The physical access problem and the financial reality reinforce each other. Even if someone solved one, the other would remain. And both of those problems sit underneath a third one that is harder to argue with. In 1995, the state of Michigan formally designated the Edmund Fitzgerald as a maritime gravesite. The legal designation makes removing human remains or artifacts from the wreck a criminal act, with narrow exceptions, subject to specific authorization. The Bell recovery was one such exception, conducted under controlled conditions with official approval. The wreck's location near the international boundary adds a second legal framework. Any serious intervention would require coordination between two governments, neither of which has shown interest in pursuing it. But the legal layer is almost secondary to the human one. Families of the 29 crew members have consistently and formally opposed recovery efforts. For them, the wreck is not a mystery to be solved or a relic to be preserved in a museum. It is a grave. The men are buried where they are. Disturbing the site would mean disturbing them. That position has never wavered in 50 years, and it carries significant moral weight regardless of what any law says. The comparison to the Titanic is instructive. The Titanic sits in international waters with no equivalent domestic gravesite protection, and it has been subject to decades of artifact recovery operations, tourist dives, and commercial expeditions. The Fitzgerald has a specific, named, enforced designation that reflects both its legal status and the community consensus around it. Even if someone developed the engineering capability to safely survey the interior tomorrow, the answer from the families and from the law would almost certainly remain the same. Each new ROV survey is a kind of countdown. The freshwater environment has kept the wreck recognizable for 50 years, but the hull is losing the fight on its own terms. Sections that were measurably intact in earlier surveys were visibly deteriorated by the next visit. There is no funded, authorized, systematic documentation program in place to record the wreck's condition before it becomes unrecognizable. The window for forensic understanding, the period during which the physical evidence of what happened on November 10, 1975, is still readable in the steel, is closing. The men inside the hull are not recoverable now. Within a generation, they may be fully entombed beneath collapsed steel, the question of what killed them folded permanently into the wreck. Every November 10, a bell service is held at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum at Whitefish Point. The bell recovered from the wreck tolls once for each of the 29 men. Gordon Lightfoot's song, written the year after the sinking, is played. People who never knew the crew and who were not yet born when the ship went down stand at that lighthouse and listen. 530 feet below the surface of Lake Superior, the Fitzgerald continues its slow interior collapse. Freighters cross above it, carrying iron ore on the same route she traveled. The water looks the same as it always did. The wreck is still there, still changing, still sealed. Not because no one cares, but because every person who cares has agreed, in their own way, that it must remain exactly where it is.